Very good evening and welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Monday night. The World Cup Weekly rather than the West Ham Weekly. Well, it's a bit of a mix of both, really. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about West Ham United and a little bit about the World Cup, a bit of a roundup. Given that it is the World Cup, there isn't an awful lot of domestic news knocking around, but there are one or two interesting stories that we have been reading over the past week or so. There is, of course, quite a few player news updates. I'm going to bring you some updates on some injury news, Kurt Zouma in particular. There's also all the rumour about West Ham United being sold. Of course, 2023 is coming up, and everybody believes that after March 2023, the board are just going to sell up and leave. Not really. Wishful thinking. I talked a little bit about that last week in the show, but I'll bring you up to date on that as well. But then, of course, there's also the FA Cup. And I'm sure you already know by now, we have drawn Brentford away in the third round. Well, of course, it had to be. Whilst all other Premier League teams seem to get quite easy runs, we go and get Brentford away, a team that we have yet to beat in the Premier League in the two attempts, and got a bit of a mixed sort of history with them. We haven't played them that often, really, in sort of recent history. I mean, if you look at very, very past history, it's been fantastic. But you look at anything recent, then it isn't quite as good. So Brentford it is at home, away. And the games are going to be played, I think, around the 8th, 9th, 10th of January. Oh, sorry, the 6th to the 9th of January, my mistake. So that's when we're expecting it. I guess it'll be a Sunday game, no doubt, but I'm sure we'll find out. Look, in our last two games against Brentford, we didn't do too well, did we? A 2-1 home defeat last year and then a 2-0 away defeat earlier in April. The only other time we played Brentford in the FA Cup was in 1927 when we drew the first game 1-1 and then we lost the replay 2-1. No replays this time, so it's all got to be done and dusted on the same day. So let's hope that we can do the business. It's ironic, really, because we got Brentford on the 30th of December, and then something like 6, 7, 8, 9 days later, we're going to play them again with Leeds United away in between. Look, we didn't do that well against Kidderminster. We only just beat Kidderminster last season, didn't we? So I guess beggars can't be choosers. Sometimes it's better to, if we're going to get knocked out, it's better to be knocked out by a Premier League team than it would be against a lower league team, isn't it? Or is it? I'd rather we go the whole way. But let's see. You never know. We might become a cup team this season and the league might just have to take a back seat, so long as we don't get relegated. Other notable games that have been, other notable draws, of course, the big one, isn't it? You know, everyone's going to be creaming their pants over Man City and Chelsea. Other Premier League, all Premier League ties, Crystal Palace against Southampton, Liverpool against Wolves, Man United against Everton. And then there's some, there's some games where, you can get giant killers. Stevenage away to Aston Villa. And then Dagenham and Redbridge or Gillingham are going to be hosting Leicester City. So whoever wins that game are going to be hosting Leicester City. So let's see. Let's see what happens. I think, this could be a season where maybe the league doesn't really do so well for us, but maybe it's going to be all about cups. Why don't we be not pessimistic, optimistic, and let's just say we're going to be a cup team this season. We're going to win the Europa Cup, Europa Conference League, and we're going to win the FA Cup. How about that? And we'll come, I don't know, 10th in the Premier League. Wishful thinking? Probably. Look, it's something to look forward to. The FA Cup starts in earnest. I'm sure one or two people have been watching the earlier rounds at the weekends. Some of you have been watching the World Cup. Some of you have been watching the FA Cup. Some have been watching both. There is an excitement about the FA Cup. Let's not deny it. It's a cup that we all love. Great history, great memories. So let's see if West Ham United can do something with it this season. Right. Before I go on, there's other news. Before I go on and talk about the World Cup, there's other news to talk to you about. Let's look at our under-18s who are just going from strength to strength. They just can't stop winning, and they just can't stop thrashing teams either. At the weekend, they faced Arsenal away from home. They made it yet another memorable cricket score. They beat Arsenal 4-1. It was their 8th league win of the season, 8 out of 8 so far in the league for West Ham United under-18s team. The other 3 games that we played this season have been in the Premier League Cup, where we won 2 of those games, and we only lost 1. We only lost 1 game in the Premier League Cup away to Nottingham Forest earlier this season. Our league form, though, is superb, 100% so far. We've scored 36 goals in 11 games, and that's 30 goals. We've scored 36 goals in 11 games so far in all competitions, and 30 goals in 8 games in the league. That's averaging just under 4 goals a game, which is superb. Look, if there's any element of disappointment, I think it's the West Ham under-18s have taken a bit of time to try and sort of not have too many goals conceded against them. So far, we've conceded 17, which I guess is not bad. Earlier in the season, we were kind of conceding quite heavily, but lately we've even been getting that right. So well done to them. I think it's fantastic. Of course, man of the moment has been. Oops, have I got a photo of him? No, I haven't. I didn't bother to put a photo of Divine Mbama up. Never mind. Man of the moment is Divine Mbama, who got a brace in the game against Arsenal. Since his debut against FCSB in the Europa Conference League, he's just gone from strength to strength. He's played 5 games, 2 for the under-21s and 2 for the under-18s, and a friendly against Feyenoord. And in those 5 games, he's scored something like 5 goals. So it's like, he just can't stop scoring. No, I tell a lie. He scored 2, 4. He scored 7 goals in total in those 5 games, a hat trick and a couple of braces. It's been superb. Look, I think we keep talking about what's going to happen with West Ham United and the fact that we don't have a natural goal scorer in the senior team. I don't think Mbama, I talked a lot about him last week in last week's show. I'm not so sure he's going to sort of break into the senior team and play have any proper game time. We might see him. I think if we'd have drawn a team, a lesser team in the FA Cup, we might have seen Mbama play a few minutes there. Will he do anything in Europa Conference? I guess it depends on who we get in the next round there. Will he do anything in the Premier League? He might be used as a sub, given that 5-10 minutes or so, but probably not much more than that. But certainly he is really on a high, and well done to him. Look, we beating Arsenal away from home is no mean feat. Guess who they're managed by? I didn't realise this. Jack Wilshere. Jack Wilshere is managing the Arsenal under-18s. So sorry, Jack, but you picked the wrong team to manage there. All right, let's move on. The women's team were in action at the weekend as well. They played Birmingham in the in a cup competition, and they beat Birmingham 2-0. Now they're through the knockout stages. They've only got to play a final game in the group stages. West Ham, to get through to the knockout stages. They only need a point against Brighton to get through. Kate Longhurst got our first goal in the 12th minute, and then that was followed up by a captain on the 76 minutes. I'll never pronounce her name. Dagny Brijan-Stostir, who stepped up from the penalty spot to make it 2-0. Next up for the women's team is London rivals Spurs. Right, a bit of news on the senior team before I go on to the World Cup. There's been an awful lot of talk about what's going on about selling the club, etc. I started the show briefly mentioning that. And there's an awful lot of speculation that the story goes, and if you watched last week's show, I sort of talked a little bit more about that in depth. The story goes that West Ham United have got a levy to pay if they sell the club before March 2023. And that levy sort of goes down proportionately as the years go by. And then at the end of March 2023, there will be no levy at all. So West Ham can sell and they won't be taxed or anything for selling the club. And there's been a lot of talk about who we're trying, Daniel Kretinsky, he's got a 27% stake in the club already. And apparently he's got an agreement that he'll have first option to buy the club if Gold and Sullivan sell. Well, interestingly, David Gold, I said last week that quite possibly, if anything, David Gold would reduce his shares in West Ham United. And David Gold, I didn't realise this. He had a David Gold sort of holding company which has sold its shares. Now, we don't know how many shares they were and what value they were and who they were sold to. There's speculation that they've been sold to Daniel Kretinsky. But even if there have been, it still doesn't make Daniel Kretinsky's overall share on the club higher than David Sullivan's. David Sullivan will still have a controlling interest in the club. And even if David Gold's shares were sold to Sullivan in this sort of consortium that he has, it won't be enough to sort of overtake Sullivan as the major shareholder. But it's quite interesting because we've got an awful lot of other things that people are talking about. There's Pavel Horsky, who bought shares in West Ham, who became a director in West Ham United at the same time as Daniel Kretinsky did. Horsky is a business partner of Kretinsky. They did the deal together. And there's talk about him being in another consortium behind Sir Ratcliffe. What's his name? I've got his name down here somewhere. Bear with me. It's Jim Ratcliffe apparently was interested in buying West Ham, and there's some rumor that there's some sort of consortium with Horsky sort of brokering a deal, etc. It looks like Jim Ratcliffe, a multi-billionaire, seems to now be interested in buying Man United rather than West Ham United. And I don't know. I mean, I think the speculation is going to grow as time goes by, especially when we go past March 2023. The speculation is going to increase. People are going to still suggest that West Ham United are going to be sold. I'm not so sure. Jim Ratcliffe, interesting character. Like I said, there's a rumor that he was interested in West Ham. There's a rumor that Pavel Horsky was interested in brokering some sort of deal or being behind the deal with Kretinsky. Look, Horsky and Kretinsky are investors. You know, it will make perfect sense to them if West Ham United was sold and was sold at a massive profit, because that increases their value in the club. They're investors. They're there to make money. But I don't know. I think we're going to sort of have to wait and find out come March, April time whether any of this is actually going to happen or not. But interesting. But I'm not so sure that Sullivan himself, I mean, Gold, as I said, getting older, etc., having sold his shares that he had in this group that he owned. It was the Gold group that sort of voluntarily was wound up earlier this year. And like I said, there were a number of shares. Gold has got his own shares, and there was this group as well that Gold was behind that also owned shares. But I don't think there were a lot, and I don't think there would be enough to actually overtake David Sullivan as the major shareholder at West Ham, even if they were sold to Kretinsky. But there's a lot of speculation going on. There's a lot of rumor going around. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happens over the coming months. But my gut feeling says, and from what I've told you before, Sullivan doesn't look like he's going to walk away from West Ham anytime soon. It looks like he wants to stay as the major shareholder at West Ham United and have a controlling interest. But we'll see. Before I go into player news, let's say hello to people. Let's see who's in the chat. Oh, let's get rid of that. Hang on 1 second. Let's get rid of 18 sexy, whatever they are. Right, that's gone. So let's go scroll up to the top. Good evening to you, Howard. I hope you're well, mate. I hope you've been enjoying the World Cup. Tell me what you think of the World Cup so far. I must admit, I wasn't really that excited this time last week, but there've been some really interesting games. Andy, good evening to you. I'm doing very well. I hope you are too. Night before the storm tomorrow. I'm going to talk a little bit about England-Wales tomorrow as well. Keith, good evening to you, mate. Kalispera to you. I hope you're well. Hoping for a strong display from Declan and the lads tomorrow. I'm going to talk a little bit about Declan as well, because he's been criticised, hasn't he, for his performance, which I found rather confusing. Martin, everyone, good evening to you. Everyone, I hope you're doing well, enjoying the World Cup. Yeah, like it's taken me a while, to be honest with you. 4-0 tomorrow, Stroll in the Park. Well, don't bet on it. Don't bet on it at all. Good evening to you, Neil, or good morning to you, Neil. I hope you're well. Always a pleasure to see you here, mate. Thank you. Flamer, good evening to you. Hello to all. With Moyes, I don't think we will hope for the next round. Brentford next round versus Millwall. Oh dear, never know. Well, Moyes is on holiday, isn't he? That's another thing. David Moyes is on holiday. There's a lot of talk about him being over in Qatar. I don't know if he went out there. I think he did. I think he did some sort of, I don't know, something with FIFA, etc. But now he's over in Florida on holiday, and so is Jared Bowen with his good lady Danny Dyer. No, I don't know if they're on holiday together. I doubt it very much. But Bowen is also on holiday in that part of the world. They are all the rest of the players are off as well, and my understanding is they're all got to be back around the 1st of December, back for training to start preparing for the league. We had an awful lot of discussion about this last week. You know, should they be away? And people were getting really angry because they were suggesting that David Moyes should be at the training ground with the team and etc. And as I said last week, at that point, he had quite a number of players away, either on international duty or they were sort of with their, if not the World Cup, their international teams. I know some players pulled out of their international teams, etc. But they've all been given time off, and now they've got from the 1st of December through to the 26th of December to get themselves ready for Arsenal. Is that right? Is that wrong? I think in a way, and I said it last week, I think it was probably not a bad thing. Maybe the World Cup has actually come at a good time for us to sort of get our minds away, clear our minds, come back refreshed, etc. And fingers crossed it will do us good. I think the way we were going, the results that were coming up, etc. I think, sometimes when a team is continuously losing games, you're sort of on that downward path and you got to, it's good to take a break from it. And I think maybe it's come out of the World Cup has come at a good time for us. Martin, becoming a cup team sounds good to me. So long as we don't go down, I don't mind becoming a cup team for this season. Alan, good evening to you. Morning here in Australia. Another Aussie. Another one in Australia. Hope you're well. I am. I think once the World Cup is over, we'll see an improvement up for. There you go. Couldn't have come at a better time. Good evening to you, Vinay. I hope you're well. Be positive about Moyes. Do you really believe it? Yes, I do, Vinay. I've got to. Like I said last week, I'm whilst he's still our manager, I will respect him and I will support him. When he stops being our manager, whether that be, sooner or later or whatever, when he stops being our manager, I will support whoever the new manager is. But as it stands right now, we've got to. I think we've just got to back him and support him and hope that he actually does come back, refreshed with new ideas. And I know what people are saying. 57 years of age, he ain't going to change. If he hasn't changed before, he ain't going to change now. I know. I get that. I understand that. I'm his age. I'm around that age. So I get it. Sometimes I'm very stuck in the ways in the things I do. And but, even I've learned new things over the past few years. So why not? So yes, while he's here, I'll support him. When he's gone, whenever that is, I'll then support whoever the new manager is. Good evening, Vina. I hope you're well, by the way, mate. Howard, under 18s could have got 10 goals. Under 8, they were all over them, weren't they? I mean, the early part of that game, it seemed like Arsenal were on top. But boy, oh boy, we were. I mean, we are good, aren't we? We've got some good youngsters, and I don't want to keep harking on about it because every time I talk about good youngsters, they end up going and doing nothing elsewhere. But I've got faith in Mbama. We kept talking about last season about Sonny Perkins. Oh, we lost Perkins. We shouldn't have lost Perkins. I think Mbama is a much, much better player than Perkins. I think he's got a much brighter future, and he could be the sort of player that Moyes might look at and go, you know what? He might fit in. He could be the sort of player that might break through. Good evening to you, Mice. I hope you're well. Fans that spend a lot of their time and money must be positive and suffer a dinosaur and become a cup team. You know what I'm like, Mice. I always try to be positive, full stop. And if it means becoming a cup team this season, to overcome the awful displays that we've had in the Premier League, so long as we don't go down, then, for this season, I'll take it. But I wouldn't want that all the time. Good evening to you, Lee. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Sarif. How are you? Galispero to you. I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, Clive. Thanks for joining, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening, Foxes. How are you? Bill, how are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Black Country, how are you? Early, keep the Gordon. Hi, everybody. We're still early. Keep the Gordon up. Keep the Gordon us. Was I early? Couple of minutes late. I don't understand the latter bit though. Clive, the entire Juventus board have resigned. Wow. Do we know why? That's interesting. Is it because they didn't get their way to have the Super League? Black Country, hi everyone. Still wet the bed. He's early on. Graham, I have no problem with the players having a short break to get their head straight. Absolutely. I agree with that. And it's bloody freezing here in Alberta. Oh, it ain't so, it's wet here in London. Fucking horrible. Oh, I fucking hate winter. I won't lie. I hate winter. I do hate winter. Great. Clive, ain't too warm in Sussex either. Black Country. All this talk about Dildo Brothers selling the club in the summer. I think it's true. Just do your research. It's out there, people. Like I said before, Black Country, I'm not so sure it is completely true. Like I said last week, and I've said it before in other shows, I think David Gold was certainly, relinquish more of his shares in the club, more because of old age than anything else. But the sounds like Sullivan ain't going anywhere, and from what we understand, he will want to keep a controlling interest in West Ham United, at least for the foreseeable future. Could change, of course, it could change. Good evening to you, Cockney. How are you? So you will support Moyes when we are no, I didn't say that. I did qualify it by saying so long as we don't go down. Right, let's go on to the next part of the show, and that's some player news. And of course, the biggest bit of player news over the last week or so is Kurt Zouma. We heard middle of last week that he has had knee surgery, and he could be out for anything between 3 to 6 months. Now, I've been looking at knee surgeries, and there are a couple of different ones. There's a meniscus surgery. There's, of course, the ACL, anterior cruciate ligament surgery. There is also a knee replacement, which I doubt very much he's done that. But if it's a meniscus surgery that he's had, the recovery time could be anything between 3 to 6 months. If it's an ACL, it could be depending on the tear, which is particularly prevalent in sportsmen. Then that could take up to 6 months as well. And we also saw Angelo Ogbonna. He had a similar sort of injury last season, and it kept him out for the rest of the season from October through all the way through to May pre-season. Look, it's no secret at all that Kurt Zouma has suffered from knee injuries throughout his whole career. When he was at Saint-Etienne and through to Chelsea and now through to West Ham United. It's quite interesting that West Ham have decided that we needed to carry out surgery. Now, I guess it kind of makes sense. He's got a period of time to recover, but I doubt very much we're going to see Kurt Zouma back anytime soon. I think at least the minimum, and of course West Ham United are going to play it down. That's the last thing they want, to sort of scare us in thinking that he could be out for a long time. But then, I've got a feeling that he might be out for quite a long time. And it sort of almost goes back to where we were this time last season when we lost Angelo Ogbonna, then we lost Kurt Zouma to injuries, etc. And then it was coming up to the January transfer window, and we thought, well, obviously, David Moyes is going to sort of get players in, even on loan, even one player on loan. And I think there was Duj Kaleta, or however you pronounce that name, when he was playing for Marseille. There was an awful lot of talk about him coming in, even on loan, etc., but nothing materialized. And then I think it's from the moment Angelo Ogbonna injured himself in the Liverpool game that our performances started to sort of get worse in a way. And I just hope it doesn't sort of happen again. I hope Moyes is looking at this. We got Ogbonna back. Fine, but Ogbonna, is not getting an awful lot of game time in the Premier League. There's Kehrer, who we don't know whether his best position is right back or centre back, but I guess Kehrer can play at centre back. There's Dawson, who's out of sorts as well. He's got his own fair share. He's had his own fair share of injuries, etc. this season as well. And then, of course, we've got Agerd, who's just come back, who's actually looked pretty good in the World Cup. So I'm worried. I've got a feeling that we're going to be short of centre backs again. And I just wonder whether David Moyes is going to dive into that transfer market in January, whether it be Moyes or whoever is going to be in charge. Let me qualify that as well. If it ain't going to be David Moyes, then another manager, etc., is going to have to consider diving into the January transfer market to get a bit more cover in central defence. Now, there's this young Brazilian defender from Sao Paulo, Luizão, who they're still negotiating some deal. Apparently now West Ham don't want to pay any compensation to his club, but there's also talk about his image rights, etc., and who's going to and the ownership of those and so on. So there's quite a few negotiations still to go on. But even if Luizão is signed at West Ham United at 20 and with no Premier League experience, I just don't know whether David Moyes would give him the opportunity to play in any games. Backup, maybe, well, maybe, but then I guess we got backup in the under 21s as well. If we need backup players who are just going to fill the bench and not actually play, so it's quite interesting. 28 years of age, Zouma now should be at his peak, but he's picking up more and more injuries. I hope that this, whatever the surgery is, I hope it's going to sort out his knees once and for all. But given he's got a history of knee injuries over the past, over his career, I don't know. It gets harder when the older you get, the harder it gets to actually get over injuries. And I'm worried. I'm worried for Zouma. He hasn't looked fit. It was evident that he wasn't fit for the game against Leicester, and kind of, it went to conceding our first goal very early in the game. And I'm worried that if we pick up any more injuries in defence, we're going to be in the same position as we were in literally this time last season. Right, who else? Well, there's Arthur. Good old Arthur. Now, if you recall, I was looking at Arthur's performances over in Turkey for Besiktas, and I was suggesting that he was doing rather well, a couple of assists and being picked on a regular basis, playing the full 90 minutes for his team, etc., and all seemed good, but not so. It seems now Arthur himself has had an injury, which is going to keep him out for a short while. Another potential, we don't know if it's a knee injury or an ankle injury. One report came out some time ago that it was an ankle injury, and another report is about a recurring knee injury. And we know that he's had a knee injuries when he was at West Ham. Now, apparently, Besiktas don't want him. They want to send him back to West Ham. And West Ham have said, no, we don't want him because we've got no plans for him. We've got no room for him in the squad. We've already got the squad, and they don't want Arthur back. So he's in a bit of limbo. He's out injured at the moment, but Besiktas don't want him, and we don't want him. And there's a suggestion that West Ham United have said to the Turkish club, if you can find another player, if you can find another team that will take him on loan for the same deal that we've got with you, then you go ahead and loan him out, sort of re-loan him out elsewhere, because they don't want him back. Now, look, there's apparently also a clause in the contract that in his loan spell at Besiktas that if he plays 25 games for the club, they've got an obligation to buy Masuaku for something like about £3 million. Very interesting. Again, my light's gone out. Never mind. There's a suggestion that they've got a buying obligation to buy. And he's only played 12 games so far. So clearly, Besiktas are not going to get him to play 25 games this season. So dear old Arthur is in a state of limbo. Apparently, the Turkish club don't want him. Apparently, we don't want him back. And so I don't know what's going to happen to him. I kind of, for once, I actually feel sorry for him. Having an injury. I thought he was actually doing quite well. All of a sudden, he's maybe, the Besiktas manager doesn't fancy him and wants to send him back. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Arthur. But people suggesting that he's coming back to West Ham in January, not so. David Moyes doesn't want him back. Another player out injured for longer than we thought was Maxwell Cornet. He came back. He in training, but unfortunately, he had a reoccurrence of his injury. But he's back in training. He's one of the few players that have stayed behind, and he's back in the gym, back in training, trying to get himself fit, and hopefully to be fit for the pre-season for the friendly games that we've got coming up before Arsenal, and then maybe have a couple of games under his belt so he can be ready for the Arsenal game itself. Look, I think another player that we bought, that's got a bit of a history of injury records, but in fairness to him, he didn't get injured that many times when he was playing for Burnley. I think he was only out for maybe 1 or 2 games. But before that, when he played for Lyon, he did have a string of injuries then. I think we kind of missed him. I said a couple of weeks back that I thought we're missing something in between our striker and our midfield, that there's no link-up play or people aren't getting close enough to Scamacca, for example. And I suggested that Pablo Fornals would be a player that would fill that gap. But there's another player, and that's Cornet. You know, we know that he can play up front. We know he can play the wing back role. We know he can play as a winger, etc. He'll give us another option. And he could be the sort of player that can get an awful lot closer to the striker. I looked at the game when he played against Chelsea, when he came on and he scored the proper goal, which was disallowed by VAR. And he was a lot closer to the attacking play. You know, he was much closer to the striker, giving us options in the box. And if he does come back, I think he's a player that we've actually kind of missed. And it'll be really good to see him back and see him playing an awful lot closer to Scamacca. Again, would he start? Well, Bowen is out of sorts. No reason why Cornet shouldn't start if he's fit on that side, you know, or play him a lot closer to Scamacca in like as a second striker or something like that, or even play Scamacca as a second striker and Cornet further up front. So it's good to hear that he should be back, and he should be back in time for the Arsenal game. Another player, Harrison Ashby. Well, you know, the news keeps conflicting. One minute we're told that he's, you know, we're interested in keeping him. Another minute we're told that he doesn't want to sign another contract and he's definitely going to go, etc. And we just don't know. You know, every week something changes with Ashby in his situation. Apparently, he's refused yet again. I don't know how old this story is, and whether it's just regurgitated or if it's new news. I think it's just more of a regurgitation of what we've already heard. But apparently Harrison Ashby doesn't want to stay, and he's determined to leave, with Newcastle sniffing around him. Now I think, and I said last week, that quite possibly, you know, one thing that might keep Ashby at West Ham is what might happen to Soufal. You know, I talked last week about Bayer Leverkusen being interested in the player. And if he does go for about, and apparently Moyes has said, well, the rumor is that Moyes will accept £6 or £7 million for the player. But here's another conflict, because 1 minute we're reading that Moyes doesn't want to let any of his senior players go, and another story that we read that if £6 million is offered, then Moyes will be happy to let him go. But I think when it comes to Ashby, if Soufal does go, that will give Ashby an opportunity, or certainly give Moyes an opportunity, to promote Ashby into the senior team on a regular basis and maybe have him compete for the right back spot. So I think we're going to have to wait and see with both of those players. Is Soufal going? I genuinely can't tell you whether he is or not, because last week there was a report that Bayer Leverkusen were very close to have done a deal with him, and apparently they spoke to his agents, etc. But it's not allowed. You know, no one's allowed to speak to him until January. But I guess these things do happen, and he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign club in January. So if he does do that, then I see quite possibly maybe a concerted effort by West Ham to actually promote Ashby into the senior team on a regular basis. If not, if Soufal stays, then I'd quite possibly you might then see Ashby leaving. Right. What about some loan news? Because whilst all our senior players have been taking time off, some of our loan players have actually been doing the business. Dan Chester, well, not so much the business, but they've certainly been playing. Dan Chester's hasn't been getting an awful lot of game times lately for Colchester United. And he was a late sub in the EFL Trophy game last week against Bristol Rovers, where Colchester lost 2-1. Thierry Nevers, a player out on loan with Newport County. Thierry, he made his 16th appearance of the season at Loan Club Newport at the weekend. He came on as a 75th minute sub in the 2-1 defeat to Derby County. And after a reasonable start for Nevers, it hasn't quite gone to plan for him since. He's had 1 goal and 2 assists initially, but he's kind of fallen away over the last few weeks. What else? Who else we got? We've got Mopo Odebeko, who's on loan at Port Vale. Again, another player that's sort of like in and out of the team at the moment. He scored 4 goals in 16 appearances for Port Vale, and he played just under 40 minutes in the 1-0 win over Charlton in the midweek. And that was followed up by a half-hour stint in the EFL Trophy win over Barnsley at the weekend. Other players that are on loan because they're in the championship, Emmanuel Longelo and Armstrong Moko Flex, have obviously not played. Right, before I go into the World Cup and my thoughts on that lately, let's go into your chat and see who else is here. So let's go down to I've done that one, Howard. So long as Jared comes back rested and not drained from smashing the granny out of Danny, we don't know what they get up to, do we? Black Country, no, Stel. Look at the board of directors. It doesn't lie, my friend. What doesn't lie? I know I know who's on the board. So I don't know. I don't think I've said anything incorrect. I know Horsky's on the board of directors. I know Kretinsky's on the board of directors. But what I'm saying is, yes, they have a vested interest. They are investors in the club. There's been that's been not been denied in any way. They have Kretinsky has got first option to buy out any more shares. What I'm saying is, I don't think Kretinsky will, but I don't think Kretinsky is interested. Like I think I said in last week's show, he was asked in an interview, does his buying into West Ham have has any impact on his holding interest in Sparta Prague? And he said no, he's not going to relinquish his holding interest in that club. And as you may know, you can't have a holding interest, a controlling interest in two clubs that might meet in Europe. Cockney Buccaneer, but mate, correct me. Do put another message and tell me what you think I'm getting wrong. I'd appreciate that. Cockney Buccaneer, Zouma has a history of knee problems. Absolutely. Foxes, he will be done after this surgery. Well, we're hoping he won't be, but I worry about his future, I must admit. Mice, I hope Moyes gets the Rangers job. Games will be like the Conference League, or Moyes goes to USA and kickstarts his acting career. CGI chief to use Moyes. Yeah, that's another interesting story, isn't it? Apparently, 2 rumours came up last week that both Everton and Rangers are interested in the manager. Apparently, Everton would invite him back and have him back at the club. Let's see. I don't know. Rangers, much more likely. I could see. He said himself he'd like to go back and manage back in Glasgow, his hometown. So that's a possibility. I don't know at this moment in time, and I know there's still an awful lot of speculation, and people have made, looked at the Pochettino interview. Well, not the interview, but he was the punditry in the World Cup the other day, and everyone's putting 2 and 2 together. Look what he said. Clearly, he's coming to West Ham because he talked about, having an attacking team and not being negative and all the sort of things that are not what we are about at the moment. And everyone's there you go, Pochettino's coming. Well, no. Doubt it. Yeah, interesting. I look, if he does get the manager's job at Rangers or anywhere else, good luck to him. I'll thank him for what he's done at West Ham. And like I said, I think people have misunderstood my approach to David Moyes. I'm not a Moyes fan over being a West Ham fan. I'm a West Ham fan. So whoever's going to manage the club is going to manage the club, and I will support that manager until that manager is no longer there. Would I support them, as Cockney said? Would you support them when we're down at the bottom of the league? I know I know we're precariously close to that at the moment, but I do. I've got to be positive, and as you know, I always try to be. I don't think we're going to do anywhere near as badly as we have done in the league when we're back after the World Cup. Well, famous last words. Victor, as the club said, Zouma has a small operation on his knee. What is a small operation? Because there are other operations, small operations that you can have on your knee. You can clear fluid from your knee, but that's only a 24-hour turnaround. It's not as if it's not a major operation, but it is an operation if you sort of drain fluid from your knee. If you drain fluid, then if it was something really that small, West Ham wouldn't have bothered to say anything. They would have just yeah, done. Back in training, job done. But they haven't, have they? It's like, oh, they have to make a statement. He's had an operation and he'll be in rehabilitation, etc. It sounds to me, it's not just a small operation. It'll be, I hope I'm wrong, but it'll be at least, it could be anything up to 3 months. Foxes, that's interesting. I was going to talk about the West Ham players out on duty at the World Cup, because again, I watched that game and I thought Kehrer did well, but then, you could blame him for the cross that led to the Spain goal. But up to that point, he seemed to do really well. I don't know. Cockney, I read that Sully didn't want to buy Zouma because of his knee, but Moyes, I've just written a script for a show that I'm going to do. It's going to be a pre-recorded show. It's going to be like a 10-minute long show. Exactly about that, mate. So do look out for it. I think I'll probably put it out tomorrow. I've got to record it. I've got to put it out tomorrow and go through that because that's quite an interesting story. And you're not far wrong. Flamer. Moyes is useless. We know that, but lately I've been thinking 80% of our players are average. Sad, but I think it's the truth. If we survive this season, we need a big player. That's a really interesting point, Flamer. And what was going through my mind is we look at the players and we sort of congratulated ourselves on spending 150 odd million pounds in the transfer market. And I just wonder, have we bought 150 million pounds worth of players that we kind of needed? Skamaka, if you're going to buy Skamaka, use him in the right way. Paquetá, we've seen Paquetá. I mean, I'm going into the other part of my show now, but Paquetá used completely different. Paqueta, sorry, used completely differently in the World Cup. Kehrer just been mentioned. People are blaming him for several goals that we've had given away for West Ham so far this season. So I just wonder, were the purchases that we made as good as we thought, and has that disrupted the other players that were there, Fornals, Declan, etc., etc.? That's quite an interesting. I'm going to look into a bit more of that and look at the stats for all the players that we bought and for all the players that are still at West Ham from last season, and maybe sort of compare their stats and see what they're doing, and whether they are being utilised in the right way. We need a new back four, Foxes. You're not far wrong. I feel sorry for Ogbonna. Ironically, if there's any player I will put in the back four at this moment in time, I'll bring Ogbonna back. And if he gets injured, then okay, then just get someone else in. But he's the one that brings an air of calm to that back line. And who would have thought that when Ogbonna first came to West Ham United? But he's grown, he's matured, and I think we miss him. And I'd like to see. I've got a gut feeling. Excuse me, that David Moyes is going to go with a back three when we return. I could be wrong, but if he does go with a back three, it'd be interesting because look at Agerd. He can play as a centre of a back three. He's been playing on the right side of a back three, of a back two central defenders. What about Ogbonna his name's just completely gone. Agerd. What about Agerd and Ogbonna at the back, and then a right back and a left back? Might work. Epic, but I agree with you, Foxes. I think we've got a problem in defence again. Epic, getting Masuaku back from Rome is like a new sign. He's coming home. Masuaku is coming home. Knee injuries never really get fixed fully. I agree, Graham. They never do. Black Country. Personally, I thank Moyes for hard work and where he's taken the club. But as things stand, it's time for him to move on now and invest in a manager who can improve us and move on. Look, I don't totally disagree with that. It's not Moyes or nothing for me. But like I said, whilst he's here, let's see what happens. Let's see if there's. Moyes has got two opportunities before the actual game against Arsenal, Cambridge and against Fulham in the friendlies. Let's see if he does anything differently in those two games. He'll still be without a number of 5 players who are at the World Cup, but he'll have the vast majority of the squad back. Let's see what he does with them. Because I agree with you. If he doesn't change anything in those two games, there's an opportunity to sort of look at different ways of playing, etc. If he doesn't use those two games, then yeah, I'd agree. Maybe it would be time to move him on. Vinay, Moyes is ruining his legacy by staying too long. It's not working. The league since late November 2021 has been terrible. And that's the irony of what I said earlier about Ogbonna. Ogbonna got injured in October. All of a sudden, our form from that time on just hasn't been good at all. And I think Ogbonna has been a massive miss for West Ham. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying it's just one player, but I just think the way we played with Ogbonna being there in the back line, etc., has been a massive miss. Maybe Moyes is hoping now that Agerd's back from his long-term injury, that Agerd is going to give us what Ogbonna did before his injury. Neil, knee injuries do come good if you have a good rebuild and spend a full 12 months in rehab before playing again, as this is how it's done in the AFL, and Australia lead the world in fixing knee injury. Good point there, but that means that Ogbonna, that means that Zouma will be out for a whole year. They won't give him a year though, will they? Will they, Neil? Which means that if he does come back earlier than he should, then of course he's going to suffer more injuries in the future. Yeah, done that one, Vinay. Thank you. Black Country, top goal scorer, Masuaku. What a goal against. Chelsea, yeah, it's not. Yeah, I won't forget that. Masuaku Steele's agent, Vinay. Ashby has no credit in the bank with Moyes, so he won't start. Ability and form is not that relevant in team selection. Yeah, I know. You know, when you look at other players, you look at Bowen, you look at Soucek, you look at a number of players that have not really been doing it. You know, and in that respect, I agree. But he likes, you know, he talked quite highly about Ashby. This is why there's a lot of confusion as to what's going to happen with Ashby, because he talked quite highly about Ashby earlier in the season. You know, he said, had Ashby not been injured at the time, he would have been taken to some of the Europa Conference League away games and maybe have got some game time as well. So I think Moyes does like him. I think Moyes sees a lot of value in him. And he is probably one of the few players in the under-21s in the development squad that is ready now to sort of go into the first team. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I get your point there, Vinay. Yeah. Jerry, Moyes to Everton and Lampard to West Ham. Oh, really? I don't rate Lampard as a manager, to be quite honest with you. You know, he had the world's riches at Chelsea. You can't really go wrong when you got the world's riches at Chelsea, but he still didn't stay there. At Everton, he's been found out a little bit. No. Would you want that, Jerry? Would anyone want that? I don't know. No, not for me. But Neil, swap Moyes for Postecoglou at the end of the season would be a good deal. Yes, his name's been mentioned before, hasn't it? My gut tells me that West Ham are going to keep Moyes until the end of the season. You know, and they're going to gamble. You know, they're going to hope that we don't go down. But I think it's going to be quite interesting what happens at the end of the season. But, you know, what's happened with Moyes, as we know, when he was at Everton, he had a really, really poor spell at Everton where they almost went down. And then the following season, they came back really strong again. And did they end up in Europe again after that? I can't remember. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Black Country Style, look at the director from JP Morgan who was brought in last year. The guy who brought him in is Trip Smith. I think, yes, you are absolutely right. Yes, that's not... Horsky, though, that Pavel Horsky, because Pavel Horsky has come in, if that's who you're talking about, Pavel Horsky has come in with Kretinsky. There is another guy, I can't remember his name. If you can tell me his name, that'd be great. But yes, I know Trip Smith, but Trip Smith's shares at West Ham United, interestingly, have gone down because Trip Smith bought 10% of shares in West Ham. When Kretinsky went to buy shares, everyone else's shares went down. I think Trip Smith's shares now are 8%. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, I know there's some sort of link. I couldn't remember if it was JP Morgan or Chase Manhattan. But so thank you for confirming that it's JP Morgan. Look, I know there's a lot of speculation, but at this moment, from what I understand at this moment in time, the speculation about both Sullivan and Gold selling out is quite low. The speculation about Gold selling, you know, it seems like he's now selling parts of his shares through the Gold group that he had. You know, that's been voluntarily closed down and those shares have been sold. We're still trying to find out who has bought those shares. There's not a lot of them, but we're still trying to find out where they've gone. Have they gone to Kretinsky? Have they gone elsewhere, etc.? We're trying to find out. So yes, Gold, I think, is going to reduce his hold on West Ham United. But my understanding is Sullivan at this moment in time won't necessarily do so. But yes, I know I've heard this thing, and I think Gonzo did a show about this earlier last week as well. So yes, something may be in the pipeline, but from my understanding, I don't think Sullivan is quite ready to relinquish the controlling shares of the club. Neil, already done that. What was that? Thank you. Much appreciated. I'm shit at this. So if you're new to the channel, do hit the like button, subscribe button, and the bell notification to tell you when I'm next on. And if you're already a subscriber, do hit the like button. That helps the channel. I've been stating this comment for the last 12 months. We're being sold next summer. Let's see. You might absolutely be right. You know, and I think a lot of fans have been speculating the same thing. They've been talking about 2023 is when Gold and Sullivan finally leave the club. That's been going on that's no secret. It's been going on for quite a number of years. But every time I ask, you know, is that true, etc., the response is yes, shares may be sold, but not to the point of Sullivan maybe gold, but not to the point of Sullivan relinquishing control of the club. So I guess we're going to have to see. You may be absolutely right. Jerry, we can't keep saying these new players need to settle in. It's here and now. Moyes should be working like mad to make that work. I agree. And I'm going to come to the World Cup in a minute and talk about, some of the teams and specifically about our players and the interesting things that we've seen. Probably a lot of things that we've already known, to be quite honest with you, and how that can improve West Ham's play. Epic. Newcastle have been buying players too, and they don't seem to have this problem with new players. Yeah, good point. I agree with that. Other clubs seem to have been settling players in a lot quicker than we have, or a lot quicker than Moyes has. Black Country, still, he's gone, mate. Lost the dressing room. Sorry if I'm being negative, but the football has been terrible. Just my no. And I look, and this is what I like about chatting to you guys, because people have different opinions. How boring will it be if you all agree with me? And I'm not saying I'm right. I just give my thoughts, and I try to be positive. And just because you're saying that he's lost the dressing room doesn't make you negative. It's how you see things, and I'm okay with that. I guess I'm holding on to what we've done under Moyes and what I've seen. I mean, I've been a supporter of West Ham for God knows how long, and we've like you, Black Country, and many other fans, we've seen some good times, we've seen some very, very bad times, but Moyes has given us 2 seasons that I'll never ever forget. The European tours and all that sort of stuff that I just never thought that we'd ever see at West Ham United again. That's not enough. I know you've got to keep that momentum going. But there's going to be a lull, and we're having this lull at the moment. Hopefully, I hope he proves everybody wrong, to be honest with you, when he comes back, and we start playing again, and I asked the question last week, will it happen? Maybe not. It might not happen. If it doesn't happen and Moyes goes and then we get a new manager, then all hail the new manager, but I asked the question last week, if we play really, really well against Arsenal in our first game back, but we lose, but we're showing that we're playing differently and really well, what then? What will fans say? Oh, well, actually, you know what? Maybe that's a building block. If we play the same way as we played before the World Cup, and we get spanked by Arsenal, then we get beat by Brentford and away to Leeds and all that, and we're saying that, and they're playing the same way, then I'm going to hold my hands up and go, you're right, absolutely right. But what happens if Moyes comes back, and the squad comes back, and for some reason we play better against Arsenal, but even if we don't get the result that we want, because I think, as West Ham fans, we've always said, put the effort in, win, lose or draw, put the effort in. That's where you build the respect with West Ham fans, and if I see that, there's hope. If I don't see that, then I agree with you. If we go into the Arsenal game with the same thinking process, with the same tactics, etc., as we had against other teams before the break, and then go on to who else we got? We got Brentford, Leeds, etc., and we're still playing the same. Then yeah, fair enough. He's learnt nothing. Nothing's going to change, and that's where I'm going to say, well, maybe enough's enough. But if we do go in against Arsenal and Brentford, etc., and really start putting the effort in, despite the results, of course you want results to improve. What then? Anyway, I'm losing my voice. Alan, I would like to buy Suter from Stoke if we get a back 3. Big, strong, and with Agerd on the left and Zouma on or Kera on the right. Then we would be hard to break. Yeah, I don't know much about him, but thank you for that. But look into him. Neil, that was Lanzini's problem. They let him play after 8 months, and I said at the time, it's too early. And even when he did play, he didn't seem confident that he didn't, did he? Didn't want to go into 50-50s. You're absolutely right. And as a defender, Zouma's got no choice. Zouma's got to get in there, got to get his foot in there. Good point. But you're absolutely right, Neil. It's going to take, if it's going to take a whole year to get over a serious injury like knee injuries, are we going to afford Zouma that time? I'm not sure that we are. I'm really not sure that we are. Aaron, good evening to you. Can you imagine Arthur coming back over on the dinghies because Sully didn't want to pay for the travel? Dear. Howard, European qualification 2 years on the bounce after a dodgy season at Everton. Yeah, see, this is what that's why it's an interesting debate, isn't it, with what's going on at West Ham? Because it is a lull. It's horrible. It's not nice. We're not performing well, etc. And yet, we still finished 7th in the league last season, and we ended up in the semi-finals of a European competition. Will he turn it around? I'm hoping he does. My half of me is saying that I think he should turn it round, and he can turn it round. Victor, if Moyes does go, bet they go for Southgate, he'll be gone off. I'll come back to that. Hold that thought, mate. Good evening, Mandy. Hi, everyone. Hi to you. If we're relegated, would Golden Sully then sell up? Probably not, because they won't. The club won't be worth half as much as it is now. Jerry, still, I don't want Lampard. Just tongue it. Thank goodness for that. It's kind of, we are better keeping what we got than a panicky decision. Very true. Very true. I agree with that. Peter, good evening to you. Michael, Rangers have taken the QPR manager. Have they already got a new manager? There you go. They ain't going to Rangers then. Clive Etherington, new manager at Crawley Town. True. No, I know. I read that earlier on. Yeah. Good luck to him. Good luck to him. Peter, playing really well against Arsenal won't happen. Stranger things have happened, mate. You never know. Good evening to you, Sean. How are you? What has he learned? Well, we're going to find out in pre. I keep calling it pre. It ain't pre-season. We're going to find out in the friendlies, in the World Cup friendlies. Hopefully, if he has learned anything. Black Country. Sorry, still can't see it, mate. To be honest, I hope you prove me wrong. It's not. Look, I hope I prove. Not just you, Ron, but I hope for West Ham's sake that Moyes can turn it round. Will he do it? Probably not. Maybe not. I don't know. Vinay, need a change from Moyes. He's been around for too long. His tactics are dated. Howard, the QPR manager, was Gerrard's assistant when he was managing Rangers. There you go. Peter, 9 defeats from 15 games don't bode well for the rest of the season. I totally agree. Flamer, Moyes will turn it around. Moyes will do us Sunderland too. Well, Sunderland didn't do too well, but that weren't Moyes' fault. They were already down when he arrived. Vinay, Moyes bullies some players and does not talk to come new signings. The kind of behaviour, but that's an interesting point. And I talked about this last week as well, because I know what was said about Moyes from the Czech Republic player Alex Kral, saying that Moyes ignored him. And I sort of talked about managers, and I said, every manager, I'm not saying it's right, but every manager's got a different way of managing players, haven't they? We know that Moyes' favourites, with players like Lingard, it was a Moyes favourite, etc. But he's not the only manager. Look at Mourinho and look at other managers who have managed teams in the past. They all have their quirks, don't they? And I talked about Bilic. When Bilic was manager at West Ham, he was a friend to everyone. And that actually led the squad to take the piss out of him. They weren't really taking him too seriously. And then look at Allardyce, who, had a manner about him, and some players he favoured and some players he didn't. So all managers have different ways. I think, a Guardiola might have a completely different way that inspires all the players that he's got. Leroy Sane, I saw him in the World Cup the other day again for Germany. He weren't happy under Guardiola and he left. So managers will always have their quirks. Moyes has got a quirk. I don't like it. I don't think it's right. I think the way he bullies Benrahma, for example, the way he didn't speak to Alex Kral, for example, is a bit shit, to be quite honest with you. I don't think that's very good man management. But then other players will turn around and talk about Moyes in a very positive way. Talk about, that the way that he was in, that they sort of inspired by him, etc. So it's not good to sort of single out players. Not talking to Kral is a bit shit. The way he treats Benrahma is a bit shit. But all managers have got their quirks. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong. But it works for some players and it doesn't work for others. What else we got here? Let's scroll down. Black Country. This season, I can't stand the negative setup by Moyes. Come on, stay at home. The way we set up, don't understand his stuff. I'm not absolutely not disagreeing, mate. I do. I think, I don't know what game it was, the 6th or 7th game into the season, when I thought that Moyes was going to change it round and he was going to drop Southgate, etc. And then he picked the same team as the team the week before, and I just sighed. I went, oh, come on, So yes, I get it. I get the whole thing about playing Downs as a defensive number 10, etc. It's like what's going on? There's some weird things that are going on in his mind. And what I tried to qualify, whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know. But my analysis of that was because we didn't have a stable defense. I've talked about it at the beginning of the show. Zouma didn't look fit. Gerd coming back from injury, or Bonner coming back from injury. Dawson in and out of the team, through injury, etc. Having to have a makeshift defence. Creswell playing in as a back in the back three, Kehrer playing in the back three, Johnson playing in the back three, and all that sort of stuff. That's quite unstabling. And my only reason why I'm thinking that Moyes was trying to set up the tactics that he did is because he was worried about the defence wasn't good enough to sort of sustain any pressure. So he was trying to probably compensate for that by playing defensive ways. I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm suggesting is that might be a reason for why he did what he did. With the Gerd coming back now, it's such a shame. Again, Zouma being out. With the Gerd coming back now, maybe with Kehrer alongside him, and then have, I don't know, Soufal or Ben Johnson on one side and Creswell or Emerson on the other side, and having, proper central defenders might give him a bit more confidence. I thought it might start working when Dawson came back, but Dawson doesn't look right. Zouma doesn't look right. Again's only just coming back from long-term injury, and I just wonder, maybe is that why Moyes set up some of the negative tactics that he did, in order to try and compensate, because he knows that defense probably wasn't as solid as he wants it to be. It's only an assumption. I'm not saying I'm right in that, but this is kind of the only reason why I'm trying to work out why has Moyes played a bit more negative than he should have done. Howard, Psycho with Di Canio as assistant manager, 5,000 to 1 on Sky Bet. God, what a combination. Victor, put £1 on it. That'd be worth it, wouldn't it? Victor, I don't think Moyes has lost the dressing room. There are players that will talk to the board. If he has lost the dressing room, the board would have sacked him by now. That is a really good point, Victor. And people said that before, that he's lost the dressing room. And I said the same. I don't think he has lost the dressing room. Certainly, certain players don't get on with him. There's no doubt about that. And I've tried to qualify that by suggesting that other managers have a similar sort of thing with their style of managing. So no, I don't think he has lost the dressing room. But I think one or two players are probably a little bit chuffed off, pissed off in maybe the way they're being utilised, etc. And maybe that's not doing certain players, individual players, much good. Mandy, for me, still, any team that can field Scamacca, Paquetá, Benny and Bowen has to score goals. We're not doing that. We're not. Now, it's another thing I said. We've had a couple of games where we've missed penalties. We've had games where we've had shots on target or shots off target. I think, like I said again last week, I think we had the second highest shots in the Premier League, 203 shots or something, which is the second highest, bar our conversion rate is second bottom. So we're not getting them on target, and even if we are, we're not testing the keeper, etc. And Moyes can't be out there, and we are creating. And I think I've said this several times before. If we were, I get it. I get the negativity, negative tactics that Black Country's mentioned, and he's not wrong. But we are creating chances. What I'd be even more worried about is if we weren't creating chances, but we are. We're taking shots, we're creating chances, we're not converting them. You're absolutely right, Mandy. Moyes can't be out there knocking the ball in the net for the players, So what is happening there? Paquetá, Benny, Bowen has been really off form, And when it comes to it, what we're sort of talking about is almost not so much tactics, but almost like specific personnel that Moyes keeps picking. And two of those players are Soucek and Bowen, both out of form. Both should have been replaced by now, with other players, and maybe we might have seen something different. It'd be a kick up the arse to Soucek and Bowen if they knew that their places weren't quite secure. Jerry, it reminds me of Les Dawson playing piano. He knew all the notes, played them in the wrong order. Sounds like Moyes and how he manages. Steve Bruce, what about him, mate? Matt Clark, sorry if it's been done already. Paquetá has looked utterly awful in both Brazil games. Subbed off at halftime today. Has Moyes ruined him? Interesting, because I think Paquetá, I keep saying it incorrectly. Paquetá, I think in the first game, I don't think he looked terrible. I think he's just playing a different way. I'm going to get onto him in a moment. I think he was taken off today. It was a tactical substitution more than anything, because it's one of the most pragmatic Brazilian teams I think I've seen, in the time that I've been watching World Cups, etc. You always have Brazilian teams that are full of flair, etc. And this is one of the few Brazilian teams I've seen that's quite. I didn't realise how Paquetá is not so much as an attacking midfielder as we all thought. He's more a sort of. he sort of sits back quite a lot in the middle of the park, and he just sprays the ball around. He's more of a sort of a deep playmaker than he is a sort of he's not a runner. He doesn't pick the ball up and run with it or anything like that. He's one touches, he sort of looks around, passes the ball, threads the ball through. Some great passes he's done. I don't think he's been awful, to be honest with you. We've just seen him play in a very, very different way to, I think, the way Moyes is trying to play him. Flamand, Stell, you can do better than Moyes. Give it a try. You can have Masuaku back. Cry. Imagine Masuaku coming back and saving our career. Is Masuaku coming back in January? No. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse. No, he's not coming back in January because West Ham have told Besiktas, or however you pronounce that we don't want him back. V9, Moyes transforming into an attacking tactically literate manager is not realistic. A realistic plan is to sell the new signings, buy Moyes type players, but it's easier to find a new manager. Ooh, sell all those attacking players and buy a whole load of pragmatic players. Interesting. Howard, there is a clause in Masuaku's loan. If Stell mentions King Arthur for 3 months in succession, he has to return. Mandy, we only conceded one against Liverpool, United and Forest. Our problem is not scoring. I agree. Our problem is not scoring. But our problem has been we're not keeping clean sheets as well. So even though we're not scoring, we're still conceding goals. That's the problem, because even just the one goal against Liverpool and Forest and Man United lost us all 3 games. Flameur, I'd rather see you managing West Ham than Moyes. At least you will not... I don't know about that. Right, let's go into the World Cup, shall we? And talk a little bit about what we've seen so far. So, I mean, how quickly has it gone? We're in the halfway stage. 32 games were played, with Portugal and Uruguay being the 32nd game played earlier in the evening. 32 games. We've completed all the second round games, and as from tomorrow, we start the third round of games in the group stages. And already we've got 3 teams that have gone through into the knockout stages, which are Brazil, France, and Portugal. I mean, of those 3 teams, the only team to me that looks really good is in my mind is France. I think Brazil, I think they've done all right. They've done enough to get through. Portugal, they're relying far too much on one player, and he didn't score that goal. He did dive in the first game, and he didn't score the goal tonight either. That went straight from, was it a free kick from? I don't think it touched Ronaldo at all, but he's claiming it, isn't he? Of course he'll bloody well claim it. So 3 teams are through already. But there's a number of teams that have gone out, and one of them, of course, are the hosts, Qatar. Who would have thought? And I just wonder what impact Qatar going out so early will have on the rest of this World Cup. You can see, I think there was a big crowd tonight, but you can kind of see in some of the games, they're not sold out, are they? And I just wonder if, as the competition goes on, whether the Qatari audience will sort of start to peter out and not really care much about it. You can win you can bribe your way to getting the World Cup. You can't bribe your way into winning it. It's quite interesting. I don't think anyone really gave Qatar that much of a chance in the first place. But them going out, will it have an impact on the rest of the competition? I don't know. I think we'll just have to wait and see. France, I think seem to be the favourites, don't they? They had a pretty easy win over Australia. I think Denmark was a tougher game for them, but they even got through that as well. And I thought after the first game, after the first couple of games, I thought they certainly looked like the team to beat. You get France, it's going to be quite a tough job to. There's my other light that's gone out as well. You get France, and I think, can you see me? It's a bit dark. My apologies. You get France, and I think they're going to be the team to beat. I thought Spain looked impressive in their first game against Costa Rica, and then I looked at Costa Rica thinking they're going to be the whipping boys, and then they go and beat Japan, who beat Germany. So that's a really interesting group, isn't it? And Germany look to me pretty unimpressive. I did say in last week's show, if there's any team that you should never bet against, it should be Germany. And they kind of got out of jail against Spain, didn't they, in their game the other night. But good goal that they scored with a player that spent most of his career in the second tier of German football. So well done to them for getting through. But I really thought that Germany were going to go out last night when they played Spain, and they just got out of jail. But I don't think the Germans are going to be anything to sort of worry about. I said it earlier on, pragmatic Brazil. You're not the kind of flair Brazil that you kind of normally expect to see, but they're grinding out games and they're winning. They've won their 2 games. They're through to the next round. They're gonna not be easy to beat. I'll tell you that. I think teams are going to find it difficult to beat Brazil. I think they're going to grind out results. And as I said earlier, someone mentioned about Paqueta being taken off, not looking great. But I think what Brazil are trying to do, certainly under their coach, is trying to not lose games. But they've got so much talent on the bench. It's really quite weird that they're not utilizing that talent until quite late in games. I wonder now, I think now that they're through, it's going to be interesting to see in their last game what they'll do and maybe give some of the Brazilian flair players an opportunity to demonstrate what they can do. England, on the other hand, I mean, flattered to deceive when we beat Iran 6-2. Probably, yeah. Iran were poor, but yet Iran were good enough to go and beat Wales 2-0. Look, when we played against USA. I mean, we haven't beaten. I didn't realize that we played USA something like 11 or 12 times, and we've never beaten them in a competition that really mattered. All the 8 wins that we got out of them were all friendly wins, it was a poor performance. It was, a lot of people will say it was a Moyes type performance against USA. It was really quite boring. But we've seen this of England over the years, haven't we? Where again, a lot of flair players, a bit like Brazil, got all their flair players sitting on the bench, like Phil Foden. Everyone's talking about Foden. They want to see Foden play, etc., etc. And yet, there's talk now that there's talk now that Gareth Southgate is going to play Declan Rice alongside Jordan Henderson for the game against Wales. I mean, fuck me. Why? Why would you want that? Why would you want it? I mean, you don't need 2 defensive-minded midfielders in the same team against Wales. No disrespect to Wales. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I just don't think you do need that. But it's really quite surprising if Southgate goes and does that. Look, it was a gutsy performance by the US of A against England, and I think that they'd probably be upset that they maybe didn't get any more of that. But it was a turgid game, a bit like watching West Ham. I mentioned it. Wales beaten by Iran. So there are surprises in this competition. Iran looked bloody awful against West Ham. Jesus, I've got to be careful here. Iran looked bloody awful against England. But the interesting thing is they scored 2 goals. All right, they got given a gift, really. The penalty was a very, very soft penalty, but they got goals in them. And they proved that when they played Wales. Now it's the group is sort of wide open because England only need a point. But what if they get beat by Wales? And then what if Iran go through? I mean, it's going to be, it's not a given, is it, that England are going to go through just like that. So I think the game against Wales is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a proper English, sort of British type of game, isn't it? People are calling out for Foden. Why is Foden not playing? And Gareth Southgate in an interview today suggested that he's got a big part to play in this competition. But if he ends up back, maybe what he's thinking is he'll put Henderson and Declan holding midfielders and allow the likes of Grealish and Foden to go wild up front. Maybe they'll be picked against Wales tomorrow. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. I think Southgate is going to get slated if he doesn't pick Foden, and it's going to be, and if he doesn't pick Foden, if we don't win or if we don't put a convincing performance in, I think Southgate is going to be on a bit of a hiding to nothing. Sort of parallels with Moyes. Maybe. Look, in the game tomorrow, I think England will have just enough to beat Wales, to be quite honest with you. I think Wales again are kind of relying on one player. If Gareth Bell was not on it, then Wales kind of don't have much to offer. I feel sorry for Wales after waiting so many years to get back into the World Cup that it might just fizzle out the way it has. I think that they'd be massively disappointed that they lost to Iran. To put themselves in the position that they're in. Yeah, England, Wales. I think we're going to see, well, if it is Henderson and Declan, okay, let's be positive. If it is Henderson and Declan playing in the middle of the park, that's because he's going to unleash Foden and other attacking players like Grealish, etc., in the same team. If he doesn't do that, I still think we'll have enough. I still think we'll get the point or more that we need to get through to the knockout stages. But England haven't impressed me, to be quite honest with you. I think they did flatter to deceive against Iran. How far they'll go, maybe semi-finals, depending on who they get in the knockout stages. Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. Other players, West Ham players that have represented their clubs, their countries, sorry. We heard today that Alphonse Areola, who had a great chance to play in the last game for France, has got a back injury. So he's missed training and he's got a back injury. So it doesn't look like he'll be playing against Tunisia in France's last game. What a shame. The one time that he might have an opportunity to actually physically play in a World Cup game has been taken away from him from a back injury. Agerd, I think Agerd has been superb. I think Naif Agerd in the 2 games that he's played against Croatia and Belgium has shown why we spent the money that we spent on him. I really, and even more surprising, he's played on the right side of a back 2 defense. And he's been very, very impressive. I've been very impressed with the way he's been playing. He's got a sweet left foot. When he passes that ball out to a player out on the wings, etc., it's pinpoint. It's superb. It's fantastic. His defending has been really assured. It's been really, really good. And I think that really, really bodes well for West Ham. He looks really on top form. And I'm really, really pleased for him. And hopefully no injuries. But I like what I've seen. Much, much more I've liked what I've seen. Thilo Kehrer, spoke about him a little bit earlier. In 2 minds over him. I get it. People saying that they should have closed the player down. Was it Jordi Alba that we're apparently linked to for crossing the ball in for Spain's goal? But I think he played all right. I think he was quite solid up until that point. And there's a lot of speculation. What's his preferred position? Is it right back or is it centre back? He is by trade a centre back. And I think maybe that's where he will be. I think with Zouma going out injured, not going out injured, but Zouma having had surgery on his knee, I think we're quite likely to see Thilo Kehrer alongside Gerd. The 2 centre backs maybe in West Ham. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think that would be quite an accomplished looking. We need new centre backs. Someone said it earlier. We need a new back 4. So why not try Kehrer with a Gerd? But my feeling is that quite possibly he'll be in a back 3 with a Gerd, Kehrer, and one other, Ogbonna or Dawson, probably Dawson. It'd be interesting. But I like Kehrer. I know there's a lot of people that are saying that he's given goals away at West Ham. I don't agree with that. I think there's been some goals scored against us that he's been exposed. He's made a mistake or 2, but then tell me a player that hasn't made a mistake in West Ham so far this season. I think most of our players have made mistakes. It just gets so mumuch more obvious when a defender makes a mistake. But I like him. I think he did all right until the time he was taken off. Going to be interesting to see how he continues in the World Cup, depending on how far Germany get. Paqueta, I said it already. Someone again said, he doesn't look good in the World Cup. He's not an all-action midfielder, and I think maybe we got it in our heads that he was an all-action midfielder when he came in, and Moyes has been utilising him as a number 10, etc. We all know if you look at Paqueta's history, and I've talked about this quite a lot before. When he played at Milan, he played in a 4-2-3-1, didn't suit him in an advanced role. When he went to Lyon changed their setup, playing a 4-3-3, and he relished that. He played in a 3 midfield, and And I think we now know what Paqueta's game style is like. It's not the all singing, all dancing midfielder going charging with the ball, etc. It's a player getting the ball deep, looking around him, spraying the ball around, doing those clever little passes, etc. That's his game. That's the type of game he's been playing. He's made some beautiful passes for the Brazilian team while he's been in the team. And the change today was more a tactical change than anything else. And he's a mainstay. I don't think I'll be very surprised if Paqueta is dropped as Brazil continue in this World Cup. Subbed tactically, yes, maybe, but I quite like what I've seen of Paqueta. A clever little player. He looks for that dinky little pass. He looks for threading the ball through the eye of a needle. He tried that a couple of times and it just didn't quite work playing for West Ham. And I quite like him, but playing in a deeper role, and people have been saying it. And I think when we did a review about Paqueta before he was signed, we said just that. You play him in a middle three and he will relish that. He will have time to spray the ball around, kind of like not move too much away from the center circle and just, control the game in that way with his passing. I think it's been quite interesting how he's been utilized. I think he's been sort of pretty decently effective as well. Declan, well, what can we say about Declan? Our fifth player. I know there's another one in Croatia. Nikola Vlasic, he had a bit of an injury, but then he came on the other night and he played a bit for the Croatian team against Morocco. But Declan, for me, comfortable performances. I don't think, it's interesting. He's been heavily criticised by the pundits about his style of play, etc. And talked about, that he's not the complete midfielder just yet. He doesn't have that killer pass and so on. But you can only play the way your manager's told you to play. And it's quite evident that Southgate has told him to sit. That's it. Now, I know Moyes has allowed him to change his game at West Ham by taking the ball forward, driving forward, etc. He doesn't have a lot of goals in him to sort of do that. And it's been tried, and if you've got a midfielder that wants to go further forward, you expect more goals from him. And he's not delivered that just yet. So Southgate has just said to him, sit, I just want you to defend that back line. And that's your job. And I think he's done that extremely well. I think he's done that effectively. I think he's he is our best England player in that role. There isn't, Jordan Henderson, I don't think comes anywhere near Declan, and Declan is much younger than him, and I think he's done that exceptionally well. Is there more to him? There should, learning more of the game at 23, spraying the ball around a bit more, maybe him and Paqueta playing together. That would be an interesting outlook, having him and Paqueta in the centre of the West Ham midfield and see how they get on. They're quite different players, but they might complement each other. And I like what he's done for England. He never lets you down in an England shirt. He never lets you down in a West Ham shirt. So I think he's done exactly what Southgate has asked him to do. So I think the criticism has been a little bit disappointing, to be quite honest with you. Right. That's it. Let's go into your chat to finish off the show, shall we? Peter, Moyes has lost his marbles. Antonio keeps finding them on the pitch, which must be why it keeps falling over. Vinay, Jerry Moffat, when pigs fly, Moyes will turn it around. We'll be interchangeable phrases in the future. Black Country, let's get Stelling as our next. I doubt it. I doubt it very much. Aaron, I was at Canby Island under 18s when Julian Dix was at the senior team. He was good at man manager. Wow, nice one, Aaron. Tell us a bit more about your stories there. Message us. Have I got my email? I never remember. No, I haven't, have I? Wow, that must have been quite a good time. Let us know a bit more about that. Let's go back to the chat. Let's scroll up. Alan, Green Suit Elites, just read that Paqueta left at halftime due to being sick, reported. Interesting, because it was a surprise that he actually even started, because there were stories that a number of Brazilian players were ill before the game, and Paqueta was one of them. So good point. Thanks for reminding me. So maybe it wasn't tactical. Maybe he was just not very well. Clive, it's all well and good having faith in Moyes, but he doesn't exactly give us reason to be positive right now. If he was a little less defensive and counter-attack minded, we might win a game. We're not even doing the counter-attacking. That's the problem. At least that way we were doing things last season. We're not even counter-attacking. Jerry, I think Paqueta was unwell. I read. Yep, thank you. You confirmed that. Thank you for that. Vinay, Paqueta is good, but his price is based on his image. If he was from Birmingham and not Brazil, it would have been sold for 25 mil. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I agree with that. Peter, Paqueta doesn't look anything like a £50 million player and isn't the type of player we need right now. That's an interesting point. And I said earlier on, have we bought all the wrong type of players? Interesting, Peter, because I think he's come in under this. He's a number 10, an all singing, all dancing midfielder, but he's not. He's not that kind of player. And playing deeper, I quite like. I wouldn't mind seeing what he can do if he was played in a deeper role at West Ham. See what would happen. Mandy, you don't want who back? You don't want Masuaku back? That's unfair. Clive, Jerry Paqueta has fed Scamacca for 2 of his goals already. They were, and he's been trying that throughout the whole of the season. He's got that he can spot a pass, and sometimes it comes off, and sometimes it doesn't. But you're absolutely right, Clive. He has created 2 goals for Scamacca. Alan, Portugal are a big chance with a swan diver in the team. Yeah, for him being in the team, yeah. France has definitely looked like the team to beat as they are playing good attacking football and really enjoying themselves. They are the team to beat, aren't they? Vinay, World Cup hooligans need to get a new manager. They have been disappointing. World Cup hooligans need to get a new manager. Billy Bob, thank you, mate. Much appreciated. Gone out, haven't they? Look, bloody things. I forgot to charge them before the. Oh God, we got XXXX18. Let's get rid of them. Thank you very much. Brazil's group was absolutely, and yet they've made hay of it, haven't they? They've done, they kind of haven't got out of second gear. Black Country. Oh, come on, people. That penalty tonight was a joke. This game is becoming. Sorry, I'm negative again. Don't keep apologising. Some of the penalties. I mean, look at the first penalty that Portugal got in their first game. Fuck me. I mean, what does VAR do all day? I mean, seriously, did he get it because it's Ronaldo? Another player would have been booked for diving. And it's not so much the technology, it's the use of the technology. I think the only thing I like about this World Cup is the added time that's being added on. I think that's a brilliant move. The minute the ball goes out, the clock stops and it carries on. You play 90 minutes. I love that. Can you imagine going to Leeds when we're playing them midweek in January and the game ends up being 2 hours long because of all the added time added on? Fuck me, we'd have to stay up there for the night. Oh, Neil, England looked good against Iran, but watching them play against the USFA was watching West Ham play, which shows there's not too much difference between Moyes and Southgate when it comes to managing. I've got to admit, they are beginning to be like 2 peas in a pod. Mandy, if Southgate had half a brain, he would rest Rice. He won't do it now because, we can still go out of this competition. So I don't think he better not rest Rice and bloody play Henderson instead. Put Phillips in, or why take him? Good point. Yeah, good point. Howard, Wales are poor. They are poor, but they're the sort of team that might end up beating England. You can see it, can't you? They get a lucky goal, or they get a Bale screamer or something like that. They go 1-0 up and they defend for their lives. And then Foden comes on the 89th minute to try and change the game. Is that Moyes or is that Southgate? Black Country. Southgate is a younger Moyes, in my opinion. Too defensive minded. Neil, I think either Clive has used his spanner or he's gone on that XXX18 site. Clive, I thought the Ghanaian lad Mohamed Kudus looks good. There's 1 or 2 that do. I like the German player that could have played for England. I can't remember, Miala or something like that. What a good, the number 14. What a decent little player, eh? What a decent little player. Black Country. I won't walk back in this England side, so much pace. That's what England need at the back. I want Walker back, but isn't he? He's injured, isn't he? That's why he's not played. But I agree with you. I think Walker is probably our best right back. Paul. Again, looks all absolutely. God, boy, don't we need that? Don't we need some good defenders to sort of come through? I fucking hope he doesn't get injured. That's the only thing I'm worried about now. I'm worried that any of our 5 players will get injured whilst they're out on international duty. Neil, haven't seen the hot girl pick. Good evening to you, Stuart. I hope you're well, mate. Hi, sir. I'm very well. Been a challenging year with my mum's health, now in the care home. but being well looked after. Had paramedics out 15 times this year. Come on, mate. I hope she's well. I really do. I know what it's like because my mum's not well either, mate. And we've had paramedics out a couple of times for her. So wishing her all the very best, mate. And I hope she's comfortable in the care home. And I hope you're doing well as well. Mandy, Dawson, Kehrer, and a Gerd play for draws. Dawson, Kehrer, and a Gerd play for draws. I don't know about a Gerd playing for draws. He's got a sweet left foot. You know, he can get our attack going with some of the passes he makes. Good evening, Eamon. I hope you're well. My preferred position for Kehrer at the moment is him at another club. Don't rate him whatsoever. Hopefully he'll prove me wrong. I like him. I actually do. I actually think he's okay. And people are sending your mum the best regards. Great to hear mum's getting good. Hope all is well, mate. No, I don't know, Eamon. I think Kehrer's all right. I think I quite like Kehrer, but you know he's been asked to play different positions, like a few other defenders have, which doesn't kind of mind you. He's done that for Germany as well, so I guess no, I like him. I like Kehrer. Black Country, right. That's it for me. Good night. Good night to you, Black Country. Thank you very much for your comments, mate. Really appreciate it. Alan, sorry, still, but Dawson has his heart and mind on move. Not the same player as I absolutely agree. I think we should have let him go. I can see why we didn't, you know, because of Bonner coming back, Bonner coming back, a Gerd coming back from injury, Kehrer being a new player. I understand why Moyes kept him, but we should have gone out, really pushed to go out and get an alternative. And Dawson, he's not been the few games that he has played for us this season. I agree, his mind is not there. He's not played very well at all. Vino, Soucek has too much credit in the bank with Moyes, so Paqueta can't be used in his position. What about a 3? What about Paqueta is played on the right of a 3 in midfield? There's no reason, and Declan usually plays on the left of midfield. So have Soucek in the middle, Declan on the left, Paqueta on the right, and have 3 players up front: Benrahma, Scamacca, Bowen, or Benrahma, Scamacca, Cornet, or Fornals, or whoever. How about that? Why not change that and see what happens? Neil, Paqueta had a really good first game, but apparently was feeling crook in today's game. That's why he came off. There you go. Eamon, pundits are only putting Rice down to try and keep his price down for their favourite. Good point. Very, very good point. Aaron, England's defence worries me. Got no faith or trust in them. I trust Jim Savile's watching my kids more than I think you want to change that comment. I get your point. God, you made your point. Eamon, VAR was brought in to favour the favoured teams. Refs have always done it on the pitch. Why did they think VAR would do anything different? Disappointing VAR. Absolutely disappointing. Jerry, our nerves would be shot to pieces if we had 10 minutes added on winning 1-0. Now that's a dream. Max, and it's the last comment. Max, good evening to you. Thank you for joining. Let me give you a quick rundown of what I've talked about in this show before I leave you. So let's go right to the start. So the FA Cup, you know, we got Brentford. I mean, you know, why not go out in the 3rd round? No, you never know. You never know. We're playing Brentford in the league on the 30th of November, and then anything between the 6th to the 9th of Brentford in the league between the on the 30th of December, and then we're going to play them again in the FA Cup between the 6th to the 9th of January. So, excuse me, a tough draw, but there you go. You know, you got to play the best to win the competition. Some other notable draws: Man City, Chelsea, all Premier League draws: Liverpool, Wolves, Man United, Everton, and Crystal Palace against Southampton. There could be a few giant killings in there. I think we've got Stevenage. Let me go back to my notes. Who have we got coming up? Stevenage are going to be away to Aston Villa. Could be a giant killing there. And Dagenham and Redbridge and Gillingham, when they play each other, the winners of that game will be hosting Leicester. So there might be a giant killing or two to happen there. Talked about the under-18s, how superb they've been and continue to be superb in the under-18s Premier League. They won 8 games out of 8 in that league, and they've been smashed. They ain't just not been beating teams; they've been smashing teams. And Divin Mbama was the man of the match again that got a brace in that game. West Ham in the Continental Cup competition. Won 2-0 against Birmingham. They just need one more point against Brighton in the last group game to get through to the knockout stages. So well done to them. We talked about Kurt Zouma, about his operation that won't keep him out for too long. But you're looking at the different operations that you have on your knees. You can have a really serious one where you have a knee replacement, which clearly that's not what's happened here. Or you can have operations like a meniscus operation, which is 3 to 6 months out. You can have an ACL cruciate ligament operation, which is up to 6 months out, etc. So I would not bet against Zouma coming back anytime soon. Yes, there are other operations that you can have, but usually even smaller operations could keep you out for at least 2 months at least. Masuaku, he's been out of favour at his Turkish loan club, Besiktas, and they don't want him, and they want him give him back, but we don't want him, and we've told them that if they find an alternative loan team for him to go to under the same agreement, then he can go. But apparently now Paul, and he's out injured as well. So I feel quite sorry for him that he's out injured. His loan club don't want him and West Ham don't want him back. Maxwell Cornet has been in the gym, getting ready, hopefully to return for the Premier League game against Arsenal. So good on him. Good on him for actually having not gone on holiday, and he's trying to get his fitness back. So, and he's he could be the missing link for West Ham United. I talked earlier about West Ham having that missing link between striker and midfield, and Cornet could be one of those sorts of players that can fill that link. Harrison Ashby, the rumours keep speculating, going from he's going, he's staying, he's going, he's staying. No one really knows. 1 minute there's an awful lot of talk about Ashby becoming part of the main setup in the senior squad. Another minute he's definitely going because he won't sign a contract. So we'll have to see what happens there. And the same with Soufal. Apparently there's been German interest, but then Moyes doesn't want players to leave the senior squad this season until the summer. And then another story says that if we get 6 million for him, then he'll let him go. So which one? There's then the loan players. Thierry Nevers has been playing games for Newport County. Odubecko's been doing reasonably well for Port Vale. And then we went to the World Cup. These are the 3 teams that are through to the next stage as it stands. And then the final group games start as from Tuesday. I wonder what the impact's going to be now that Qatar is out of the World Cup, and the impact it might have on the numbers attending the games. And then we looked at a couple of teams. Germany have looked unimpressive, but they're the sort of team that just look unimpressive and then get to the final, won't they? Pragmatic Brazil, they're doing what they need to do. We're always used to, all us older guys and ladies are accustomed to seeing the flair Brazil coming out, knocking it about like it's fun, but it's much more a pragmatic team. But they've done what they need to do and they're through to the next stage. England should be able to deliver more. They should have enough to beat Wales on Tuesday night, and Wales kind of let themselves down, and they could have given themselves a massive chance to get through the group stages if they'd beaten Iran, but they look poor, to be quite honest with you. Talked about Foden and who's going to be in the lineup, and there's an awful lot of talk about Jordan Henderson lining up alongside Declan, 2 defensive midfielders. Does that mean that Southgate is going to unleash players like Foden and Grealish in the starting lineup? And other players, West Ham players, Areola's out injured. The one opportunity that he might get to play for France in a World Cup game, he hasn't actually played. He's won a World Cup medal, but he hasn't actually played in a World Cup game. And he had that big opportunity, but apparently he's got a back injury and he may miss the game against Tunisia. I think Agurda's looked fantastic and that bodes well for West Ham. I think Kerr has been okay. I think he's been solid, but a lot of other fans don't sort of like him too much. Paqueta, a much deeper midfield role. I think it's going to be interesting what Moyes does with him when he comes back to West Ham after the World Cup. And Declan getting unfair criticism as far as I'm concerned. I think he's doing the job that Southgate has asked him to do, and he's doing exceptionally well. What else did we talk about? We talked about a possible takeover, all the things that are going on at the moment behind the scenes, with David Gold having Gold had a sort of a group, the Gold Group, who had shares in West Ham United that has been voluntarily dissolved, and those shares have been sold, but we don't know who they've been sold to. There's talk about Kretinsky buying more shares and taking over West Ham. Kretinsky himself has kind of alluded to that he's not going to do that. Everyone is speculating that come the end of March, when the levy on the board selling West Ham ends, the 20% levy ends. People are speculating that West Ham are going to be sold, but I'm not so sure. And the Jim Ratcliffe, who was apparently interested in West Ham, is now interested more in buying Man United than he is in West Ham. Will they be sold? I don't think. Gold maybe, like I said earlier on, because of old age. But Sullivan apparently still wants a holding interest, a controlling interest in West Ham. So, a few more comments and then I'm off. Where did we get to? We got to Max saying hello. Clive, thanks for your comments. Please remember, yes, like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff. Good night to you, Howard. Thanks for watching and thanks for your comments. Alan, loved it. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated. You guys make the show, as I always say. Thanks, Neil, and thanks to you, Paul, as well. Have a good evening. Come on, England. Or if you're Welsh, come on, Wales. But come on, England, really. Thank you all for watching. Really much appreciated. And I'll see you very, very soon.